Rachel, welcome to UK Column. For the audience, we'll just play that little clip to give a little bit of context to what you've been doing.
Hello, just a quick video to let you know about a brand new YouTube channel we've started called Colchester Council Watch. And in this new channel, we're going to take a real deep dive into how councils work. Now, obviously, we're going to be focusing on Colchester, but regardless of where you are in the country, the information will still be a benefit because there's a lot of stuff we've observed over the last 9 months or so that everyone needs to be made aware of. So we'll be doing deep dives into how the council operate, but also do weekly updates so the people of Colchester and surrounding areas really know what is going on. And our hope is the more people that see just how these councils function or don't function that well, the more people will get involved and get interested, and also the more people that will come to council meetings to have their say and perhaps even become councillors themselves. So head on over to CCC Watch, link in the description below. At the moment, there's only a handful of videos giving the backstory of how this all started, but also one on planning. And it's quite mind-blowing when you see exactly what goes on behind the scenes there. So I'll see you over at Colchester Council Watch.
Well, excellent. Rachel, that's a lot of work, I know, looking at those videos and thinking about what goes into even producing a small video clip. You've done a huge amount of work. Just for the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get started on this?
I ask myself that question every single day. Basically, I went along to a local council meeting just to see whether they had plans to turn Colchester into a 15-minute city. As you may know, Colchester was always a town, and then all of a sudden they announced we're a city now. So that got a group of us quite suspicious as to what plans they had in store. And I very nearly didn't go to that meeting because it was a cold January evening. I thought, oh, do I have to? Well, no, just go along. All you've got to do is sit there. You don't have to say anything. And then to my horror, when the meeting got going, they said, right, 2 of you, because people were talking so much, wanting to ask questions, they said, well, 2 of you can come forward. And because I'd arrived so late, I got tapped. I was sitting at the front, so someone was able to tap me on the shoulder and say, will you do it, please, Rachel? It was like, oh, okay. So that's sort of how it started, just inquisitiveness, which, yes, I'm somewhat regretting now.
A willing volunteer. I remember many years ago when I was, where was I? I still believed in part of the system and I was helping with local elections and things, but there was a particular person, it wasn't me, but a person who was asked if they were happy to be a paper candidate. And they said, look, we just need a name to put in. No way will you be elected because you're just a paper candidate. But we need to do this as part of the politicking going on in the area. And of course, the person concerned, who was a lady, was elected. And she, even though it was into local council, she was just fascinated by that. Well, not fascinated, shocked. But it turned out well in the end. But yeah, you never know what's going to happen.
Often that's the way, isn't it? People who have greatness thrust upon them turn out to be far better than those who've been supposedly prepared for such roles.
Yeah, this is true. So you did this, Rachel, and what? How would you judge your efforts? What do you think you've achieved by starting down this path?
Yes, that's an interesting question. You could say nothing on if you were trying to get from point A to point B, because the way councils function, they don't make decisions quickly and they don't really want to be derailed from the route that they're on. But if you look at it in a bigger global picture, the videos have gone so viral with us discussing the dangers of EVs, how dreadful the mining is, both for the environment and certainly those batteries that have cobalt in them with the child slave labour, that bigger awareness, it's got a conversation going that perhaps wasn't going as much as it should have been. We have definitely made some inroads in the council, but if you're wanting a direct result from point A to point B, you have to be very patient. So we're getting there with them, and they are looking at things and are considering things, and they have agreed in principle to a public debate on these issues, but it's not a quick process. So yeah, there's nothing tangible I can say we've achieved this, but there has been a ripple effect with other people starting their own Council Watch channels and holding their councils accountable.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that actually one of the things that would have happened pretty quickly is that you would have made the council and the members very nervous, because although the public has an absolute right to go into the council meetings to observe and actually to ask questions, they don't like this happening. And for you to start this initiative where increasingly more and more people are going to be watching what they're doing, looking at the policies and asking the questions, I can imagine there'll be a few of those council members who will be very twitched indeed at the thought they're being watched.
Yes, I think it's probably the ones behind the scenes more than the actual councillors. A lot of the councillors really welcome us coming along because, one, the meetings are a lot more lively, but two, they're getting people's participation rather than them being moaned at after the event. They want people there to voice their opinion while they're making decisions, not after the event once they've made those decisions. So the good councillors really enjoy us coming along.
Yeah. And just before I sort of hand over a bit, the other thing that I'm interested in is this business of what do I call it? Policy templates. So that previously at local authority level, okay, there were government policies coming down which they were going to follow, but usually the bulk of the policies were made in order to provide good service to the local community. But now we're seeing absolute templates with everything to do about greening or low emission zones. And so all of them are tending to work to a very regimented, or work in a very regimented way. So if you're challenging it in Colchester, it's almost as though somebody could pick up on what you're doing and directly use that in another area. Would that be a fair thing to say, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Very early on, we created a Dropbox resource folder, and it's under a lot of the main videos where people can download our speeches, our research, all the information that we've gathered, including our freedom of information requests and the emails going backwards and forwards with the council officers so they can see what opposition they're going to be up against. But yeah, absolutely. Everything is being rolled out across every single council. And a lot of it is because of funding. They get grants awarded if they do X, Y, and Z. So, of course, every council is cash strapped, so they will do as they are told. And they think that doing anything is an improvement rather than seeing, does that work? For example, Colchester, it's an old town, obviously, the oldest in Britain, apparently. And our roads were not really designed for cycle lanes, yet they're trying to shoehorn them in everywhere, and it's causing so much traffic and congestion in a city that's already congested because it has been developed beyond the capacity of the infrastructure. But because they're getting money for bicycle lanes, in they go, regardless of whether they're actually sensible or not. And I know this happens everywhere.
Yeah, Mark.
Interesting parallels. Our guests can respond a little bit as I go along on the American side. One factor, and I've covered municipal government since 1985, one factor is like the International City Managers Association. In America, we have city manager form of government with a weak mayor at the local level, or you can have a strong mayor where the mayor is a more direct participant and doesn't just cast a tie-breaking vote or something, and there's no city manager. But most often you see the city manager form of government. And so the mayor is sort of a figurehead. He'll vote. He's not a non-voting member, but his role is diminished. His power is diminished. In comes the city manager, whose magazine, trade journals that they use for local government are based on, a lot, like our guest said, a lot of grants, a lot of greening, a lot of politically correct stuff. And they want that money to come in. They want to look good. So a lot of what they do is kind of a marketing thing. They're always trying to polish their image. Yes, we're green. Yes, we're on the cutting edge. And in my town of Bridgman, where I grew up, they repaved the main street right through Southwest Michigan, that southwestern Michigan city. It's a small city. And they put these bike lane markings on the new pavement, and nobody knows what they mean. I actually had to call City Hall and ask them what the lines mean, how to understand and interpret them, so as not to drive incorrectly in my automobile down the street. So it can be small things, it can be large things. There's also, they have townships in Michigan, what's called township government. Not every state in the union has that. And there's the Michigan Township Association, the Michigan Municipal League. All the states have similar organizations that are kind of like think tanks, quasi-private organizations. They publish journals, and some globalism gets into those journals. And so then the cities begin to vote a more global governance kind of flavor to what they're doing, along with their normal, local issues that they do. And so if the public doesn't get involved, the city council tends to kind of go into a default mode and just pass what the city managers associations and municipal leagues wants them to pass. And the other thing I'll add is that when you read those journals from those organizations, it kind of instructs the city councils on how to behave. Don't individually pick apart an issue. Learn to vote as one. Learn to vote in unison. Learn to reach consensus. And what they're trying to actually do is discourage dissent within the council, which can be a negative thing. If a council member wants to raise an issue and say, this doesn't smell right, this doesn't sound right, they ought to be able to do that. But they want this all for one for all philosophy that's encouraged through these organizations. So they tend to vote as one block rather than individual council members voting their conscience. These are just some of the dynamics on the American side. Maybe the guest has seen similar things.
Yes, definitely. They're trying to do something here called devolution, where they are going to amalgamate various councils together and have a regional mayor controlling everything, which it sounds a lot like where you said you've got the stronger mayors. And we've already seen how that's gone in London. Not well. So they're trying to take away the power from the little councils. And we've got in the next county in Suffolk, Sudbury Council have held firm, and they've got a vibrant little town because they've got the free parking. They haven't got bicycle lanes blocking everywhere. They encourage the car, whereas all the other places are trying to block it. And also they block the planning for a lot of these developments. They're known apparently as the renegade council, but they have kept Sudbury nice. Whereas around Colchester, it's been so overdeveloped on the say-so of government policy that we've lost that. So yes, they're trying to do more of it. And I think before long, councils are either all going to be bankrupt and the receivers will be running them, and therefore they definitely will be doing everything on a financial basis rather than for the good of the people, or they're going to be gobbled up into these giant councils where you won't have any say at all.
Yes, there's three cities on the south coast of England that are already amalgamated into a unitary authority, BCP, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. And local viewers there with access are telling me that council is on the verge of declaring bankruptcy, even though they've amalgamated the three cities together. So in England and Wales, what happens then is that the Secretary of State takes it over and runs it and parachutes a team in, isn't it? And then you never return to the status quo ante after such a thing. You always find, same on the continent here, that as a result of this going bust, a new tier or a larger scale of government is brought in.
It's basically changing public opinion through persuasion tactics, and they openly say it in their meetings. They've tried to put that in, but they want the councillors to do something called carbon literacy training. Now, I know you're familiar with Sandy Adams' work, and she's done a lot on that. So they're trying to, with that carbon literacy training, which is a qualification, they're trying to get the councillors to have these breakaway groups with the vulnerable people in society. And then basically it's a form of brainwashing where they go out and sell to other members of the public why we need to be doing green things everywhere and having low traffic neighbourhoods. How well that's going to work in Colchester, I don't know, because the opinion on the street and certainly in the newspapers because is people are just sick to death of them mucking it up. They're sick to death of the way the shops are declining because they've already put some, they call them parklets, but they're basically seating areas down the high street, and they are trying to pedestrianise more and more. But I think a lot of it, the reason the councillors get behind it so much isn't necessarily for the green credentials, it's because they know Colchester is so congested, they think that if they make it so that it's pedestrianised, we won't actually notice just how badly they've mucked up the planning. So there's that aspect to it as well. But yes, there's certainly a big push to have as much pedestrianised as possible. But the pushback from local businesses and local people has been good. So we've stopped one area in Crouch Street and the High Street. Recently I read in the papers that the council is saying, we'd like to pedestrianise it, but we've got no plans to at the moment because it's not popular. So yeah, we're getting there with it.
Yeah. One of the things that comes into my mind as you're talking through that, Rachel, is if we go back 20 years, I down here in Plymouth in the West Country, I got interested in seeing what was happening with all the European Union money coming in. And at that time, there were a lot of various funding pots that were all to do with regeneration. I can't remember the names of the Interreg and various ones, but
regional development authorities.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But the money always came from the European Union, and I watched as communities, so little towns, got very excited that they could put in an application to get European money, and they could then regenerate the town. But of course, what they had to do is put in a plan for what they wanted to do. And we then started to see urban areas of UK becoming uniform. Because, of course, the moment one of them had put in a plan and they were going to pedestrianise the high street, then another authority would say, oh, well, they got 5 million to do that. What we need to do is to grab their plan and we can put our application in. And this is where we started to see across UK the whole nature of a lot of towns and cities, urban conurbations change, because they sucked on this European Union money to regenerate, and with the so-called regeneration became an absolute uniformity of what a city looked like. It would have the pedestrian areas, even the street furniture, the benches and the lampposts would look the same. And coupled, of course, with the demise of a lot of the shops and the increase in charity shops in particular, well, I haven't so much in the last couple of years, but I have driven around a lot of UK. And as you visit parts of the UK, you're astonished at how everywhere started to look the same and how bland it is. Is that something you can relate to, or do you think that's a bit unkind with what they're doing?
No, it's happening here, except it's government funded, called the Levelling Up Fund. Now, when I first heard that term, I assumed they meant they're bringing things up to a certain standard. So I thought, that sounds quite nice. But no, they mean literally levelling up. So,
Mark.
Yeah, one dynamic in the States, one time it was about 2002, I want to say, a guy from the Middle East who was accused of having terrorist ties was having a federal court hearing in Detroit, and I went to cover it. And we're coming back from Detroit, and it was very foggy. We're heading west in Michigan, and somebody said, get off at this exit. And the bus driver couldn't see very well, so he had to get off that foggy highway, Interstate 94. And I said to the guy sitting next to me, I go, what town is this? He goes, I don't know. It's the same everywhere, the same McDonald's, the same chain restaurants. One town is as another. And in the States, you have this incredible amount of homogenization going on. And like in my hometown here in Texas, they give ribbon cutting ceremonies for chain restaurants, chain coffee stores that come in, more Walmarts than you can possibly imagine. And they'll go hand over fist, groveling to them, ribbon cutting ceremonies. They practically call out 21 gun salutes. But knowing full well that the local mom and pop businesses are already struggling and are up to here in the water. And then they go down more and go down more. There's no consideration for the mom and pop businesses. So these forces alone, tend to homogenize the towns in the states. And I wonder if our guest has seen that, where chain businesses and large conglomerates are given preference over mom and pop businesses in the dynamics of city government. Does that happen?
I don't know if they're given preference. I think they make it with the taxes so difficult for the little businesses that just through their policies that automatically the chains have an advantage. But also we as individuals have a lot of say in this. Why are we going in to Costa Coffee and not or any of these things like McDonald's? Why aren't we shopping in these local businesses? So it's down to us as much as anybody to support our local businesses. So, and that would help a great deal. But unfortunately, people don't. But Colchester is nothing at the moment. We've lost so many department stores. We're mostly sort of charity shops. There's not much in there. You go in when you absolutely have to. It used to be an amazingly vibrant town. And little by little, it's just got to the point where none of us want to go in it.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing that's has disappeared in huge numbers are pubs, and pubs were inevitably part of the historic culture of many places, because the pubs were often extremely old buildings and buildings of architectural significance, even if they were relatively simple. But we've seen this massive decimation of pubs over the last few years. And what's been causing that, as far as I can see, essentially it's the power of the big chains.
I think there was definitely an attitude from the Blair regime onwards of we don't want the plebs talking and sharing their culture and sharing ideas. It wasn't just hard economics, right? Because sometime in Blair's second term, an edict went out that publicans would require a live music license, even if a couple of people struck up with a spontaneous song, even if it was not even accompanied on instruments, let alone amplified instruments. There was a couple of people having a sing-song, the publican would come over and say, "Oh, you have got I've got a license here." There's got to be something at the back of that which says we do not want people, in gatherings enjoying who they are and remembering the past.
Yeah. And the other one that comes into my head is the requirement for insurance on very small village or community events. So in my own village, many years ago, there used to be a really excellent firework gathering on November the 5th. And that was eventually put out of action because, of course, everybody got terrified of public indemnity and the government saying anybody who puts on these events has got to have full public liability. There is still a cave system in the village where I live, Limestone Cave. And that used to be open to the public until the landowner got very squeamish and then said, well, I can't make, with a modest ticket charge for people to come in, he couldn't make it pay anymore due to the costs. And I have to say, I don't think these policies are accidental. I think they were very devious, little creeping policies to actually shut down our life and our communities. So you're up against a monster, Rachel. We all are, really.
That's why things like Council Watch are so important, when we're hoping that people all up and down the country and in other countries will do the same. Yes, it is a bit time consuming because for me, I do lots of snippets from the councils, but even if someone just does a summary of what happened in the meetings so that local people get to see what's going on, because very few people are going to sit through 1 to 4 hour council meetings, but everyone needs to know exactly what's happening in their council so that they can get in before the decisions are finalised.
Yeah. And are you, we just say, members of the public, are you getting interest from members of the public, or are the people getting involved with you sort of natural activists?
No, it is the general public. They might be the more active ones, the ones that would be writing to the newspaper and the radio, etc., to voice their displeasure. But yeah, it's surprising. And what surprised me the most, actually, is that the Colchester Council Watch is getting viewers from all over the world, not just Colchester, because that's what it was originally set up for, but a lot of the way the councils work is fairly universal. So people are able to see what's happening in Colchester and then realise, that's probably happening at our local council as well. So they're knowing, we try and educate as much as we can in the videos so people can go and do the research in their own councils, and we sort of show them where to look on websites, etc., for planning applications, and show them how everything works so that they have a much better idea of what's going on locally. And it's the lack of knowledge that is the problem, and combined with collective apathy. But I think if people understood more and were more aware of how the councils are functioning and what is being decided upon, then I think that galvanizes people to take action.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant.
If I may, that's what the press has traditionally been supposed to do. So I commend the guest for doing really traditional journalism in that sense of holding the council to account and giving people advanced knowledge of what's going on rather than after the fact. It's funny how in this world you have to kind of reinvent the wheel and fill in all these gaps that our traditional institutions are completely failing at. So this is very commendable.
It's citizen journalism, and that has been what is really helpful, because people don't have an agenda. They're just saying, look, here's what's happening and you need to know about it. So that's often more trustworthy than the mainstream media, well, certainly these days.
Yeah. Any interest from the local media, because you're doing something which is unusual and you're involved in the community? Have you had any interest from the media?
No, they know we exist because people keep mentioning it on their websites. But if you think about it, we are almost competition to them because we're reporting in a way that they just can't. And with the video. So I wonder, it'll be interesting if the newspapers do mention it, but I know they know. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's a very good point, that you're doing their job in a way, so they've got a problem there. Yeah. Well,
without the shackles, without the advertising to worry about. They covered one of the meetings I did on the hazards of EVs, and they covered every last thing I said except for the reason I was anti-EVs. And you think, what on earth? Why would they do that? The article made no sense. And then I realised, of course, their advertising comes from car companies. So they dare mention, these things catch on fire, etc., etc.
Yeah, incredible.
What's really good about this is that this can provide the citizen support that local councils need to be more courageous, to not buckle under peer pressure. And so if overly stringent medical mandates come down, especially with the World Health Organization treaty in the works and updated international health regulations, when it percolates down to the local level, with this encouraging more citizen knowledge and more citizen involvement, maybe the local councils will stiffen their spine a little and say, these health mandates don't make sense. We don't agree with what's going on, rather than going with the flow. So I would think, in my opinion, this would also have that effect, at least potentially.
Yeah, great. So
yes, we have had councillors come up to us afterwards and thank us for coming. And we've noticed some of them have actually said, because you were there and it was obvious you were supporting what I was saying, it made it easier for them to voice their concerns because they had 30 people cheering them on. So it is very powerful to get in there physically as well as doing the channel, but they can, with the YouTube channels, they can see the comments, they can see exactly what public opinion really is. But even better if people can get in there in person and back the councillors up, because they're in a very corrupt and difficult system that isn't in our favour. So any support we can give them, they do need that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Last thing for you, you have our audience at the moment. What would you like the UK column audience and our wider audience to do for you?
Well, I would love them to come onto Colchester Council Watch and subscribe and like a few of the videos. And also Stockport Council Watch has started up as well. Give them some support. Because it's a new channel, it's difficult getting the algorithm in your favour. With my previous garden design channel, videos were getting sort of 200,000 views, but a brand new channel, I'm lucky if I get 2,000 views. So if people can like, share and subscribe, that would really help, and also support anybody else that is setting up their own Council Watch channel, and consider doing that as well. If they email me at colchestercouncilwatch@gmail.com, we can give them some resources to help them get going. And we've got a whole load of videos they can put in a playlist that are already done and dusted, because topics like 5G, you don't need to redo that on every channel. They are universally applicable, so we can help people get going.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, Rachel, thank you very much for that. I think we're going to have to end there. Interesting times, but Rachel, it's been really great to hear what you've been up to. We'd like to hear more from you. We've got some other people, such as Artwell from Oxford, who's not doing exactly what you're doing, but he's definitely got a team of people that's now challenging the council. And we'd like, UK Column would love to do as much as we can to help and support and promulgate the good work. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.